Hey y'all. All right, today we're going to talk about survival. Not survival in the jungle or some kind of deserted island, but we're talking about survival of the independent filmmaker and the independent film industry. We've seen a massive amount of changes over the last few years, and sitting here in the middle of 2021, it's more true now than ever that nobody knows anything. Nobody has a really honest, surefire, guaranteed way for independent filmmakers to make their money back. Now, one of the biggest players in these waves of constant change comes from the streaming platforms and the competition between these many streaming platforms. When they first got started, platforms like Amazon Prime and Netflix really embraced independent filmmakers, and they made some good money off those views. There was a decent turnaround and a great place for independent filmmakers to get their stuff viewed by millions of people. However, as these platforms have kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, they are now turning their backs on independent filmmakers. And one of the biggest ways that they're doing that is reducing the amount of payment that independent films are getting paid. For instance, right now on Amazon Prime, with very few exceptions, your film might get 1 cent per hour of viewing. That means for a film to make just $10, it has to go through 100 hours of viewing. This is not sustainable for filmmakers and for the people that work on these films. If a film went through a distributor or an aggregator to get on these platforms, which they almost always have to do, especially if they want to be seen outside of the US, the way that these contracts are structured, the filmmakers will almost never see a dime because the money will go to the distributors or the aggregators first, and they will almost never funnel any of that movie to the filmmaker. Not only that, these companies will keep your film for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, sometimes even for good. So the filmmaker will actually lose control of their own movie, and this does not help anybody who's involved in the creative aspect of making a film. So if never earning any money on your film isn't a problem enough, we also have the issue of algorithms. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, I don't even care if I make that much money on it. I just want the exposure, right? Exposure, that's the big thing, right? Well, most of these platforms, but especially Netflix and Amazon Prime, they employ these complex algorithms, these formulas that evaluate the viewing trends and the statistics of these shows and films on their platform. They do not share these formulas or these algorithms with the filmmakers or anybody else. So it's almost impossible for a filmmaker to get a really firm grasp on what a film needs to do in order to succeed according to these unavailable statistics. Because if a film or a show underperforms according to these algorithms, whatever they are, it is taken off of the platform. It is removed. And the reports so far have been pretty clear that it's almost impossible. Once film has been taken off of these streamers, it's almost impossible to get it put back into the loop again. This means that if a film goes through Netflix or Amazon Prime or one of the other streamers as their sole method of distribution, if that film doesn't happen to be trending that month and it gets taken down, it basically disappears forever. Because you as a filmmaker don't have access to it. The fans of the show don't have access to it anymore. Because these contracts that are done up by the distributors and aggregators, they've locked your film up for years at a time. Your film basically ceases to exist, and there's nothing the filmmakers can do about it. This is a major, major problem for all people who work on independent film. So what's the solution? How do we survive? Again, nobody knows anything, least of all me, but I do have a theory on something that might help, and that involves going back to the stability of DVDs and Blu-rays. Now, the tech companies will sneer and say that hard media is dead and nobody wants it anymore, but for the vast majority of the country, and definitely around the world, having discs or other hard media is still a very valid way to view content. As streaming becomes even more rampant, we're seeing the constant increase of prices due to these subscriptions. They become more competitive. We've seen platforms that are only 2 to 3 years old already executing several price hikes. Add to that the increased demand for internet use. The internet prices keep going high, and these internet companies are having a hard time keeping up with this constant use, the constant streaming. The increased demand from work at home is putting a higher and higher strain on the internet. That means the quality of viewing things keeps going down. Now, you might be in a great area where that has great internet, but for a lot of the country, they're still a little bit behind and they're still struggling. And so that means low quality streaming, broken streaming, lags, dropped signals, there's weather problems, there's a whole litany of things that negatively affect the viewing experience of your film. None of that stuff exists with hard media. You get access to the film anytime you want in the absolute best quality. It's original quality anytime you want, the way it should be. So my survival tip for independent filmmakers is to keep investing in Blu-ray and DVD. Now, if you want to include a digital file in with your film, great. I love that. I love having the access to having a digital version of the film, but having that hard media is really, really great. That way, if the digital platform ever comes down or there's an issue with the streaming thing, you can always have that film readily available in the exact same quality every single time. Now, these distributors and aggregators and most of the other distribution companies will negate the value of a disc or hard media. That actually works in your favor. So when you're sitting down to do these contracts with these companies and you're looking for distribution, see if you can leverage in for yourself the ability to create hard media, that you control domestic or even foreign and domestic DVD and Blu-ray distribution. Even if it's just selling it from your website, that's a huge benefit, that no matter what happens on that platform, no matter what occurs in the industry or what kind of conditions exist in the internet or whatever kind of problem that happens, your fans, your people who actually like your film and want to watch it and keep watching it will always have access to it. Because I'm telling you, as soon as these films aren't trending, as soon as a new thing comes along, your film is going to get dropped. And if it gets dropped off these platforms, there's almost no way that it's getting up on anything else ever again. So invest in hard media. It's a survival tool. I know it feels kind of like a backward step, but sometimes having that extra stability, having that extra assurance that your fans and you as a filmmaker have access to your own film, that's worth its weight in gold. So take that for what it's worth, and good luck in all your filmmaking.